This is our first episode of Strong Principles, and we're basically putting together a podcast for local individuals. And me and Zach were talking about it, and a while ago, the reason why we put it together was that there was no local podcast, especially in fitness, and that's what most of us we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and so we're located in Vero Beach. You're Rob.
Yep, I'm Rob Dela Cruz. I'm the owner of Vero Strength and Conditioning. I've been around strength training and conditioning for about 35 years. I've been training people for about 25 years, and I've owned this facility for 16.
Yeah, and I'm Zach Bragg. So Rob and I work together. I've been his head coach for the past 5 or 6 years, but been doing it a long time, about a decade. And just been hitting my feet running. So I still am a lot on the floor and handle a lot of our personal training. I also manage all of our coaches. We all kind of tag together with our programming, but my main setup, my main niche, you could say, is a Rotary specific program that we run out of our facility at Vero Strength. And so we target tennis players, golfers, baseball players, anything that's Rotary. And so that's been kind of my mainstay for the gym. And so we're working with a lot of different athletes on athletic and Rotary training.
And Zach's been with me since he was 14 years old.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm the guy with the dad bod. I'm
but the most experienced when it comes to this.
Well, yeah. So yeah, as far as like audio and that sort of thing. But yeah, so I've known Rob for a long time. When Rob started the gym, actually, that's when I was in shape, not in a shape. And I was actually, help Rob a couple times.
Yep.
Did a couple of sessions, and life got in the way. So here we are.
We'll do one podcast and just dive deep into all our backgrounds and stuff and going into it real deep.
You're a pivotal piece to this, though. You're the pivotal piece here.
Yep. So I think today we want to talk about real training versus fake training, right?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into actual strength training and what it really looks like, because there's a lot of misconceptions that we run into all the time. And as fitness is starting to get more popular, you start to see a lot of boot camps and chains start to open up, and we also start to see a lot of different combinations of things, but they're starting to use strength in their name because that's a buzzword now, basically. Yeah, exactly. You want to use strength in your name. It was like basically what functional fitness was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone put in their name, even if you're not really doing it. And so we're here to kind of really explain what actual strength training really is and what makes it really effective and what's ineffective strength training.
Yeah. And I think like what Rob said is the main thing. And with me, cause I work with mainly clients now, a lot of one-on-ones, is the misconceptions just from their backgrounds. And so they come in and you tell them, we're going to do strength training, and they start running right through a workout. It's almost basically cardio. And so that's what a lot of the gyms and a lot of the facilities that we see are just training. They're not training proper strength. So I think getting an actual understanding of what that looks like, what's required, is important for everybody in order to build muscle. Yeah,
I agree. So basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying a lot of people, what they're doing is they're actually they're doing, like, let's say a movement like a bench press, but then they're also throwing in a row and just making it more of cardio rather than focusing on the actual like strength training aspect of it.
So yes and no. So what's happening is, as fitness is starting to grow, franchise models getting popular, there's a lot of intensity and there's a lot of movement. So what strength training truly looks like, and there's different types and we can kind of run into it, but what strength training really looks like is you're doing a strength exercise. And it's not the exercise, because everybody's doing squatting, pressing, blah, 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 blah. Everything is. Yeah. It's the intent and the way it's laid out. So let's just go with a classic 5 reps of 5 sets of 5 reps of just a bench press. 2 minutes rest between. You have warm-up sets, you build up, and you have this rest built in. So now let's go to something that's not strength training. 30 reps here, 20 reps of something, and you're moving through it, and it feels like something's going on, but what you're really doing is basically doing conditioning. Yeah. And so that's what we run into a lot. And then if you throw in a cardiovascular machine, now you're definitely running into more conditioning than you are into strength training.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily So like what you mentioned there, if somebody pairs a bench press with a row, that's actually a really solid, that would actually be a really solid strength program if somebody followed that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to focus all on one muscle group. And actually what we mostly believe in is movement patterns, not necessarily specific muscle groups. So if you came into our facility and we showed you up to the board and took you through a workout, we wouldn't say today we're training chest. We would explain today's a strength day. Here's the phase we're in. We're running this phase for 4 to 6 weeks. Here's what we're working on. So, and the reason behind that is so that way, there's some novelty with training, so you can phase your training. But also we're focusing on just the movement pattern, getting really good quality movement patterns. And so for your example of like doing a bench press with a row, that would be okay, but it's more so the intention. So like Rob was saying, so if you went into a bench press with a row and we had somebody at a really light row and a really light bench press and they can do 10, 15 reps and they're just moving back and forth as quickly as possible, it wouldn't have the same stimulus on the body that we'd need for hypertrophy or hyperplasia. It would really just send more of a signal of conditioning. And so it's more so how much tension can you create when you're doing it? How much rest do you have when you're doing it? And we can talk more about like what good rest periods and how to build tension properly looks like. But it's not exactly the exercise. Really good programming can put together a grouping of exercises and get you a better stimulus than just doing it randomly. But if you were to take somebody who was brand new and just picked an exercise and did proper strength training with them with a proper rest, the proper intention, you could pair it with another exercise, and they'd see benefits from that. Eventually down the road, you'd want to get them to more programming, but it's not exactly the exercise, more just the intention.
Yeah, strength training's actually a lot of neurological.
Yeah.
So basically what it is there's a lot of practice. And to get stronger, a lot of times, it's not only that you're physically getting stronger, like all the things, bone density and muscle getting stronger, tendons and ligaments, but you're getting better at the movement too and exercise. So when you put strength training exercises, for instance, a squat, a press, or whatever you're doing, and you start adding a lot of reps or you comboing them through continuous circuits, then you're going to start pulling the actual signal away. And then that's when the body kind of has a mixture of signals and it starts turning into more conditioning.
So when you say signal, you mean like today, right? I'm going to use me as an example.
Yeah.
If I do squats, my knee just balloons up, right? My left knee specifically, constantly. And it could be multiple things. I feel like it's, I'm a desk jockey by day, right? Because I work from home. I work in a desk. I sit in a desk. So if I feel like it's basically a flexibility issue for me. I feel like it's either my feet, because my feet, when I walk, like I'm basically like this, right? So it's horrible. And so I have that going for me. And then I can tell that my ankles are tight. I can tell that my calves are tight. And then in turn, it's just, the hip bone connected to your knee bone scenario. And so it's just like a chain of events that basically screw me. And really, at the end of the day, I just got to get up and stretch. But is that what you mean by signal? Like the more you're doing?
So what I mean by signaling is the body works off of signals. So you go and you create a stimulus that you're doing something, and then it sends a signal to change to either get better at it or break it down or
change
whatever.
The tissue,
yeah. So, but what you're talking about, so we work in movement patterns most of the time. And so I'm not married to any exercise, but the 6 fundamental movement patterns is squatting. You got to sit and stand up. You got to be able to lunge. And that's basically going backwards, forwards, walking upstairs. You need to be able to hinge. You need to be able to bend. So basically bend over and pick something up. You need to be able to go ahead and press overhead vertically or horizontal or some version. You need to be able to pull vertically or horizontal. And then you need to be able to carry something. Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking about squat blows up your knees, one is we take a look at your movement pattern, what's going on. And 2 is what version could we do? Like, could we box squat at a higher box that it wouldn't do that? And we can create strength and then start going a little lower from there or working there. Or you might just be sticking with a box squat the whole time. But with that, we're sending the squatting signal
properly.
To get better.
That makes sense.
And so like with you, and again, it goes back to training movement patterns properly. Like what Rob said, first we would take a look at what is your movement pattern now. And that's why we think it's so important that you don't just focus on legs, right? So most trainers, or I don't want to throw that in anybody's mouth, but a lot of trainers, what they might do is they might say, okay, well, squatting hurts your knee. Let's not squat. Let's quad extension. Let's hamstring curl.
That's what an orthopedic surgeon would tell me.
Right? That's
And
what
I'd be
they
like,
would tell you. But
piss off.
Yeah.
the 5 foundational moves has a squat in it, right? And we do it in everyday life. So that's a movement pattern we have to do. Now what happens if you have to sit in a chair, if you go to pick up your kid off the ground, whatever you do, you have to use that movement pattern. You can't quad extend your kid up to your shoulders. So a lot of times they just try to like wean away from these movement patterns and they just focus on the muscle groups. And so, yes, does that send a stimulus for a change in tissue, maybe more bone density? Yes, but it takes away from you as a human being what you should be able to do. And also you're not getting the actual full benefit of what strength training could be for you.
Yeah, and we can dive in. We'll dive into like a little deeper, like with machines and then free weights and everything else that works. But like working on movement patterns, what it is means that I'm not married to any specific exercise. Yeah. And like I said, in strength training, everyone's doing kettlebell swings, goblet squats, they're lunging, TRX rows, but it's like the way it's formatted and laid out that's going to make it strength training, which is going to create a stimulus for adaptation. And a lot of people get confused on what's going on. And what I see happen is in the beginning, when people first, it's movement quality. You got to be able to move. So that's why we're looking at the movement patterns. Once those movement patterns look pretty good, then we can start adding a little bit of load, which is going to send a bigger signal. Okay. And then once we do that, you start to get stronger. Then it becomes more effective. But what happens in the beginning, a lot of times, one, their movement patterns aren't really good, or maybe they're not very strong. It just depends on who it is. So when they're doing a strength workout, they might feel like they're not doing enough. So then what you see is like, oh, I'm going to go jump on a bike after, or I just don't feel like this is enough. And in actuality, it's kind of not in the beginning, but once we get you strong enough, it's going to be. And the thing is to kind of hang in there, because if you don't do that, what happens is when you go and do more is you can overwhelm your body's ability to recover. Or if you threw in some conditioning, then now you're kind of blunting the signal.
That makes sense. So that's in the vein of good or like real strength training, right?
Yeah.
What would be fake in that scenario?
I'm glad you brought that up. So I was just about to say, let's talk about what fake training would look like. And for me,
and when you say fake, I like to say not so much fake. It's just maybe less effective ineffective for actual strength training. Yeah, because like I said, a lot of people are using the word strength, but when an actual person that has been around and doing strength for a long time, it doesn't look anything like strength training. It a lot of times gets masked as conditioning.
Yeah. So if I have a client walk in the door, you can almost tell right away if they're set up to contract properly for strength training, and I'll use that word, or if they're set up to be able to get more out of less weight and less reps. So that's the first thing I'll look at. And I see it a lot in both men and women, but a lot of times in women, and it's mostly because they come from maybe an athletic background, or maybe they come from another gym where they're trying to move through reps quickly. So the first thing that I think a bad strength training workout would look like is, what does your tempo look like on your reps? So if you're moving just quickly through all your reps and just moving the weight and you're not creating any tension in your body. So if I do a row, I'm trying to engage my lat. Now, I can take my arm and pull it, and there's a bunch of other muscles that I can get to pull the row. I could use my shoulder, I could use my bicep. If you're just moving through the weight as quickly as possible and there's no tempo to it, there's no tension to it, we're not going to hit the lat, or it's very low chance we're going to hit the lat.
When you say row, you mean like
a
the actual
dumbbell row or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Not the row machine.
Not the row machine.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about like a dumbbell row, or even a cable row, a barbell row, any of those. So
the rep ranges are all over, like, right?
Yes.
You would say that. We would say that. And like what Zach was saying, but it's when I see higher reps, then you see the actual movement patterns start to break down.
And it breeds a lack of tempo too. So if you have 15 reps, if you give a client 15 reps, they're thinking 15 reps, I got to get through this. So then they just start ripping through the weight. There's a good saying that you should be able to make the first rep feel like the last rep. And so a lot of times trainers will just I'll give you 20 reps, because on reps 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, then it'll start to burn. But if I can teach you how to properly make sure that first rep, you feel it in the lat just as much as you do on the last rep, okay, now your timing's good and your tension's good. And a good like strength tempo would probably be 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down, 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down, somewhere in there. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's under control. And so one thing we want to look at too is there principles of strength training mixed into whatever you're looking at, whatever program it is, whatever franchise model, whatever. So when you're looking at the principles, it's like, do we have progressive overload? And like, okay, well, what is progressive overload? It's like, okay, are we progressing this exercise from week to week? And is it a similar exercise or at least a movement pattern? And so in progressive overload is like, we can add load, which is great. That's really important. We can add reps. We can add tension. We can add complexity of the movement to change it, to make it a little more complex or a little harder. So those are all really important. But one of the most important is, are you getting better at that movement pattern or that specific exercise from week to week?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I'll be honest with you, like specifically in dumbbell row, I just rip right through it, right? Because like, I just think like, oh yeah, I just got to pick it up, put it down, right? And so my tension is 1 second, right?
Yeah.
Up and down, right?
Yeah.
But in theory, I see what you're saying. We're like 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down. And that's really going to be what's testing your strength. Because like a 1 second is more of, it's really more of a jerk.
Yeah.
Rather than a lift.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's time to move fast.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
There's time to move fast. You know, I mean, we have speed, strength that we work on, but it's like, it's how it's laid out.
Exactly.
And so when you start getting into, let's say, let's get into a group program. So you got the latest franchise model that you're getting into, and now you're going there and we're hitting there for 45 minutes and hey, this is our strength workout mixed with our cardio, and you're doing 45 of this and we're doing 45 push-ups, but like 10 of them are halfway decent. The rest are falling apart and I'm under extreme fatigue and I'm breathing really heavy. Once you start breathing really heavy and start moving and the weight is light enough, your body thinks that it's actually conditioning. So you could be there doing jumping jacks or you can be doing there whatever the weights, but it is not getting the signal to get stronger.
Yeah.
And that's a bad misconception that most people don't understand. And so what happens is everybody gets a little better at everything in the beginning. And then you plateau, and then you see them. They don't get any stronger. The movements the quality even starts getting worse. So that's what we tend to see a lot of times.
Yeah, and I think so. Like going back to his point about the programming, and so are these indicators in there of what a good strength program looks like? Is there tempos laid out? We'll oftentimes put what the tempo is. What's the intention? So we use an RPE scale, and so that's a 1 to 10 scale rate of perceived exertion. So that's a good way to kind of figure out your weight. Because most of the times you get somebody who just comes into a gym, they don't know what weight to use, but they can kind of gauge 1 to 10. Okay, this is about a 7. This is how difficult this is. So we'll write an RPE scale in there. And then the other thing is we start out most of our clients with one-on-one training so we can teach them how to properly move, how to properly contract. And I say the words tension and contract. Basically, can we get the proper muscle groups to fire on any given exercise that we give you? So I would say that those are the 3 things that I look for most with one-on-ones and with classes. Yep. Is, are we reaching the right RPEs? Are we at the right tempos? And is our movement pattern, the tension, how we contract, just how good is your technique? How good is your form on any given exercise? Is it good? Is it sufficient? Is it of the best quality? So that way then you can start getting into some more advanced progressive overload or whatever the program turns into. But I think, in my opinion, a good strength foundation has to have those 3 indicators. And if you don't, then you might just get the wrong stimulus.
Yeah, and like programming is really important. It is so important in the way the workout's laid out. A lot of times you'd be so surprised, especially advanced coaches that have been around a while, how simplistic the workout is, but how effective. That's where you're really going to see a coach's education and knowledge. You're going to walk in and you're going to see a typical strength, and it's 3 exercises. It's a squat, it's a push, it's a pull, and then they carry for the 4 for like maybe midline tight end. That's it. You're like, what? That's 5 reps, 5 sets of these 3 moves, and we're just going to move through that. Comparative to like kind of like a jumble of like 20 different exercises with 30 reps, completely different.
Yeah, I could see that. So I definitely want to touch on something because, trying to get back into it. So I started I was so used to doing the Metcons and all that other stuff that kind of, I'm going back to foundations of like, all right, let's just get back to like strength training.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you say
Get
Metcon,
stronger.
you're talking about metabolic conditioning, which you're talking about. It could be a combination of different things. They call it mixed modality training. And you're doing a combination of basically a circuit and you're moving through it fast.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So now I'm like, all right, let me just slow things down. lift weight. And, my goal is to get, just get some strength back. Right.
Yeah.
So what I started doing is I downloaded a app by Arnold Schwarzenegger's, so it's called the Pump app. Right. So I was like, it's a perfect time to talk about this. So been at it for a little bit off and on, cause I've been traveling a lot and life anyways. Worked out yesterday and, it started off with an incline bench, followed by a dumbbell row.
Was it supersetting or
no?
Okay, so
No,
single.
so
What was your
3-minute interval? So 3-minute rest.
Nice.
In between each one.
And then what was the what is it called? Reps and sets.
So prescribed it was 12, 3 sets.
Okay,
12 reps.
that's rock
3
solid.
sets. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the back, the dumbbell row was 10, 3 sets. Everything was 3 sets with this guy. It's like 3 minute rest, 2-minute rest for the dumbbell row. Then we moved on to an awkward shoulder press that I've never really done, but I was like, I'll do it. Where you sit at the end at the end of the bench. Everything was dumbbell, by the way.
What was the awkward shoulder press?
So
Was it called the Arnold press? Was it?
I don't know, but you're hanging.
Oh,
And then you bring it up like a jerk, like a clean, sorry, and then you press.
so basically it was a
Curl
dumbbell
press.
clean and press.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sitting down, right? So
It's a seated. There's a sitting clean and press.
Seated.
Yeah, seated.
Yeah, so that's what it was. I was like, all right, I've never done it before, but sure. So I did that. Again, 3 sets of 10. And then we moved into, I want to say, if I remember correctly, it was maybe curls and then triceps. And then it was planks. That's how
Okay.
we did. Yeah.
I mean, the Arnold's app's going to be solid.
Yeah, I was
Because-
about to say you could have just told us you just sprinted backwards, but it was from Arnold. We don't. This is
Yeah,
good
I wouldn't
follow.
talk shit about
There was
him.
no way we were gonna.
But no, but the thing is so let's go into like rep schemes and sets. And so you got. I'm going to start out with 5x5. So you got 5 reps of 5 sets. That's a very classic strength training, reps and sets. It does 2 things. It does one, that it works towards muscle building and also works a lot towards strength. It's like this middle level. So then we go down and we're going to go 5x3s or 5x2. So that means you're doing 5 sets of 2 reps. That's high percentages of load, but that's really geared to strength. So now let's go above 5s. And then we got our classics. I mean, you can have 5x7s, but you normally we'll go 3x10s, 3x12s, 2x15s, 2x20. You start getting up to the higher ranges. And stuff. So those are like all kind of classic. And what you were doing, they're basically giving you some of the classic
It's a good base model.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what I felt. So you do upper body, lower body, and they go through different classes. So right now I'm like in the intermediate class.
So is it always 3-minute rest?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So, because the thing is, and we'll get into the rest. So why do we rest? Since you mentioned the 3 minutes. So we'll put a minimum of like 1:30, depends on the exercise. We usually say 2 minutes to 3 minutes at least. And it depends on what we're doing and like the demand on the body. But strength training has got more to do with the rest than it actually does the exercise. Because you start doing that same, you would say your whole workout, the same thing, and you don't rest, you start moving through and you start circuit basing it. It's not strength training anymore.
Yeah, the body responds to the rest period, responds to the strength work too, but it responds to the rest period. And the stimulus is just not going to be the same. The contractions are not going to be the same without the rest. So to your point, that's why when you said had a 3-minute rest in between, I was like, nice. So actually, you could add that to like the 4th intention. So if you're walking in a door at a gym, or you're looking at a program on an app or whatever it is, and you're trying to identify, is this going to be a good strength program for me? That base model is really good. So what Rob was talking about, these sets and reps, is it follow these? Is it 5x5s or 5x4s, 5x3s? And then does it progress you into 3x10s or 3? Whatever that looks like, those are good base model numbers that Rob talked about. But then does it have those indicators? So, okay, yeah, there's set rest periods. 2 to 3 minutes is what we would say is a minimum for strength training. Okay, yeah, so it has 2 to 3 minutes in there, great. Does it tell you the tempo? Then does it tell you the intention? So I think, yeah, exactly what Rob said. I think that app would be great.
Yeah, and the thing is, Larry, with the rest too, it's like, well, why rest so long? I don't feel like I need that much rest. So you got to remember, like with strength training, it's neurological, and so it's basically like practicing. But if you think of like the way the nervous system works, is that and fatigue works is video games. You go from red to full energy green. So 3 minute, well, I would say around 2 minute, you're starting to get into the greens. You start cutting it down shorter, you're in the reds. So your body's not fully ready neurologically even to go on and do the demand again and get the same outcome from it. So there is a time to shorten rest, but that's usually when you get pretty advanced. That's not before. And usually people start shorten rest before.
And why do they do that, right?
Yeah.
Because they feel like they're not getting anything out of the exercise.
Because they're not there yet
because they're not there yet to do it.
It could be that, or I could tell you, my wife hates working out. Like, so let me just get rid of this.
I just want to get through the workout.
So you have that clientele too, right? Where you're just like, fuck this, I'm out, right? I just need to get through this workout and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, you do run into that. And there is something of, you have to like be able to program, and there's some entertainment for the person to be able to feel like they like it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, when you're doing something that's effective, you know what people really like? Results.
Yeah. So like someone like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but someone like your wife, she would, so if let's say she got a program off an app or got a program from somewhere and she's like, I only have so much time, so I'm going to rip through it. She would get way more out of, rather than trying to get through 5 circuits of supersets, just go through 1 circuit and follow the rest periods, follow the intention.
Yep.
And just do that. And rather than being pressed for time with the other thing, just go through the 1 circuit.
Well, to your point too, though, now that I'm thinking through this, right? If we are doing tension and it's the right tension, first rep, same as last rep, you have no choice but to rest.
You have no choice but to rest.
With people with good experience, Larry can make heavy loads. I mean, light loads still heavy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So,
Rob, how many times have you been like working out and then another member will work out and they're doing like 55s and they're doing a shoulder press and then Rob's doing like 35s and they're like, oh man, I'm doing more than you. It's like, you don't look like that. You know what I mean? But the point is that you can create tension properly and you can make lightweight feel heavier. And a lot of that comes from knowing what exercise it is, right? So like if we're going for a heavy deadlift, that's going to look a lot different than one of us.
Much more neurologically demanding. And it depends on how much you're moving and everything else. But the thing is too, you want to remember that there's a big difference between what's tolerable and then what's optimal. And what's optimal for people to get better, especially in the beginning, is not that much. It might just be a couple days a week of strength training of 2 to 3 basic exercises and you're in and out. And you could see a lot of results. Where you run into problems, you see, is when people, they pack in a lot and too much and they kind of like overwhelm their abilities of where they're at.
Okay, I have a question. I have a buddy of mine who doesn't like to work out, right? But he wants to get into shape. So it's quite the conundrum. So
his name's not Larry, is it?
No, it's not Larry.
Oh, okay.
Although I don't like, but in all seriousness, so he's been, watching YouTube, all this other stuff. And what he ran into is there's a guy, he was a bodybuilder, Mike Metzer. Yeah.
Heavy duty.
Yep, heavy duty. So apparently his take is just do, like, let's just take bench press. Do bench press until you fatigue, and then you're done.
Yeah. So the thing is, when you're listening, you got to be careful, like when you're listening to certain things, because you're listening to somebody that's not the norm. So that program has been around a long time and has only worked for several individuals. And a lot of times you don't want to go to fatigue. If you go to fatigue, one, usually there's failure coming in right after that. And 2, you can overwhelm your body's ability to get better. So if you go and you do too much, you don't get better. You're just trying to recover. So you got to kind of be careful with that.
Yeah, there would
less
be
is more.
Yeah.
So it'd be like me just saying, I'm going to go David Goggins right now and just
yeah. And I'm not like a huge like.
Which would be stupid.
No.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Because like I said, there's a big difference between what's optimal and what's tolerable. And for some reason in the fitness industry, most people gear towards tolerable.
Yeah.
They look for soreness, which is not a good indicator of a good workout. Now, like feeling you did something is one thing. And when you first start, there's kind of soreness is going to happen. Yeah. But a lot of times soreness, especially like really bad soreness, is you overwhelmed your bodies to recover. So now it's not going to adapt. it's just going to go to recover, because the first thing it wants to do is recover. Then it's going to send some signaling to go further and adapt and get better. But if first thing is going to recover. So if you made it so bad that it's just barely trying to scrape to recovery, you're not going to get any better.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about then, like, so obviously we want this podcast to be on a local level. So we're talking to, you know, the same things we preach to a lot of our members and a lot of our clientele, but we might get some who just live in the area or who are around the area. What could they do if they wanted to start a strength program that they know will work and that they know is beneficial? What would you say the first thing they should do is?
Come to Vero Strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first thing, like I would say to do is first is start looking at programs and kind of like listening to people, what's going on. And like I said, is that strength training has a lot more to do with the rest periods than it does the actual exercises.
Yeah.
And start slow and easy, 1 day a week.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times we just say 1 day a week. That's all. Most of the time, our personals, that's how we start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So like, I know you're not going to agree with this, but I ran yesterday.
Yeah.
But I didn't run. I did like a walk run for a mile, just to get my feet wet. And the way I did the walk run was I did like a 1:40 walk, 20-second run, just intervals constantly.
And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with running. Running is a natural human thing to do.
Yeah.
And done correctly and like working on technique. And
Well, yeah, it's just like immediately just going straight into a mile. I don't know if that's smart, especially when I don't have flexibility. You know, there's like a lot of issues there. So that's why I was like, you know, but I got Brooks. So,
Yeah.
You know. Anyways, I forgot I was going with this. But
did you do it so now like we'll get into strength and conditioning mixed a little bit before we end, I guess, real quick.
No.
Did you do it at the same day that you did?
I did run in the morning.
Okay.
And then in the evening I worked out.
Okay. So
I did
separating it.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, so if you're going to work out, right, you definitely would advise to stay away from certain trainers, or just, you know, or don't really want to call that out. Cause
depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
I think like if your goal, like if you're somebody who has maybe a lot of ailments, someone like you, for example, you feel like your mobility's bad, you got a bad knee. I don't think a good goal for you would be to let's just see how good of shape I can get in as quick of time as possible. That should be maybe a goal later on, but right now we should just get our body moving properly, get rid of these ailments. But if let's say somebody had like no issues, no injuries, they're already in pretty good shape, they worked out in the past, and their goal now is they want to get better cardio, they want to get fitter, they want to be able to run. So it just depends on what your goal is. You want to hire a trainer or follow a class based off that goal. But no matter what your goal is, doesn't matter. There should be, in our philosophy, there should be some sort of strength training implement in there no matter what. Yeah, even if it's just 1 day a week or 2 days a week, there should always be in there. There's
a lot of good trainers in town, and I would you want to kind of like educate yourself a little bit, and you want to interview a little bit, see what they say. Do you like it? Is this geared towards something that you were thinking? So that's what you want to do.
That's a great point, right? Because like I know we're about to wrap up, but I think one thing to keep in mind is that if you're heavy or you're unsatisfied with yourself, you didn't get that way overnight.
Correct.
Yeah.
So getting back in the shape that you want to be shouldn't be overnight.
Well, yeah. So what happens a lot too, Larry, is there's a lot of promises that you got to be careful about, like all kinds of different facilities and different programs. If it's not a sustainable approach, then you're going to run into issues. And a lot of times we start out real slow. And then as we get slow, hey, 1 day a week. Then we start going to 2 days a week. And then, all right, then let's see how you do 3 days a week. But you'd be really surprised how much results you can get.
Yeah.
And also is you got to remember the way the body works. When you go and you do something really fast to it, it's going to have pushback, and it's not going to be able to sustain that. You want to take this approach that you're going to be able to do this for a lifetime.
Yeah. If you don't
not the next 6 weeks, and then you're going to have to take a rest.
Yeah. If you don't have a sustainable approach, you won't have a sustained effect, right? So you need to pick a program that you can stay on. I think to your point, and kind of talking about what we were talking about earlier, if you're looking for a good trainer or if you're looking for a good program, if you come into their gym and they just throw you right into a workout, it's normally not going to be geared towards a good program. just from what we've seen. So
should always be an assessment.
Should always be a movement assessment first. So if you came into our facility, the first thing we'd do is we'd sit you down, talk about your injuries, talk about your workout background, how old are you, what's your daily lifestyle like. Once we find out all those indicators, then we take you through. We have 13 basic movements that we take you through, and then we score you based on those. There's never a pass or fail with any assessment, and it should always be that way. But there is, okay, here's what we know we have to work on and fix before we would get you into a class program or a strength program. And again, that goes back to proper movement patterns. So I think if you're looking for a good one, if they start off with an assessment, and then, you could ask the questions, well, in our strength training, how many days a week are we doing? If they just try to jump you right into 5, they're just trying to make money, right? But if we just say, hey, I think we should just start with 1. I think we should start with 2. Okay. Well, now he knows he's trying to take a sustainable outlook on how I'm going to train, and then start asking other questions. Okay. Well, what body part should I be training? Well, we're going to push and pull. We're going to squat, hinge, and carry, right? And if he says those things, okay, so now you're starting to find good indicators that this is going to be a good trainer or this is going to be a good class for me.
Yeah, and you're going to hear him say something about a fundamental movement patterns, and that's where you want to spend the most of your time at. And they want to progress from what's simplest to complex, and that's what you're going to look for when you go into there, and you want to hear those words. But we spend the most time on those movement patterns.
Yeah,
great advice. All right,
cool.
Wrap it up.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.